forgetting one thing that goes very well with lobster.
In 1988, Ron Howard stood at the peak of Hollywood success. He was the golden boy who had gone from Happy Days to the director's chair, crafting some of the decade's most celebrated films. But that year, one project would push him to the edge. It was a movie that began as a dream and spiraled into a creative nightmare. It wasn't the budget, the studio, or the script that broke him. It was her, the woman at the center of the storm. What started as artistic collaboration turned into tension, clashing egos, and behind-the-scenes chaos that would leave scars Howard still winces at today. So what really happened on that set? And why does Ron Howard still look back at that 1988 film with regret? Join us as we dig into the story Hollywood tried to bury. From child star to Hollywood legend. Before the fame, before Happy Days, before the Oscars, there was just a small-town boy from Duncan, Oklahoma, born on March 1, 1954. With show business already running through his veins, Ron Howard wasn't just raised in Hollywood, he was built for it. His father, Rance Howard, was a director, writer, and actor. His mother, Jean Spiegel, was an actress. The family name might have been Beckenholt once, but when Rance traded it for Howard in 1948, he wasn't just choosing a stage name, he was setting the tone for the next generation. At the time Ron was born, his father was serving in the U.S. Air Force, but that didn't stop the pull of storytelling from shaping their family's world. The Howards weren't your typical Hollywood clan. They were dreamers who treated the craft like a calling. Ron's ancestry, a blend of German, English, Scottish, Irish, and Dutch roots, hinted at the kind of all-American face that would soon become one of television's most familiar sights. As a kid, Ron grew up around cameras and sound stages instead of playgrounds. His classroom wasn't always a school. Sometimes it was Desilu Studios, where he was tutored between takes. When he wasn't learning lines, he was learning math at Robert Louis Stevenson Elementary, or history at David Starr Jordan Junior High in Burbank, California. Later, he'd walk the halls of John Burroughs High School, balancing scripts and homework like it was second nature. He even made it to the University of Southern California's School of Cinematic Arts, but by then, he already knew the truth. He wasn't meant to sit behind a desk. He was meant to sit behind a camera. Howard has often admitted that even as a child actor, something inside him was already drawn to directing. Watching grown-ups call action and cut sparked something he couldn't shake. It wasn't just about being in front of the camera. It was about creating the world behind it. His first big break came early. In 1959, a freckle-faced 5-year-old Ron landed his first credited film role in The Journey. From there, the floodgates opened. He popped up everywhere. The DuPont Show with June Allison, The Twilight Zone, Dennis the Menace, The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, and even Cheyenne. He wasn't just another cute kid on TV. He was a natural, focused, and sharp, and was already showing the kind of discipline most adults struggled to master. But it was 1960 that changed everything. That was the year little Ronnie Howard, as he was billed then, stepped into television history as Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show, just 5 years old, and already America's favorite son. The role defined his childhood, but it also gave him something more valuable than fame. It gave him a front-row seat to greatness. Ron is often reflected on his very first day on set. He remembered being completely fixated on a small prop, a toy turtle. In the scene, he had to pretend the turtle was real, and worse, that it was dead. He recalled how Andy Griffith gently talked him through it, turning a moment of make-believe into something magical. For Ron, That day wasn't just about acting. It was the moment he learned what storytelling really meant: truth, emotion, and connection. The Andy Griffith Show was television comfort food, simple, pure, and filled with heart. It didn't rely on flash or trends. It leaned into warmth, family, and small-town values. Even though it aired in the heart of the 1960s, it felt like a love letter to a gentler time, a world untouched by chaos. The cast became household names. Andy Griffith was the wise father figure everyone wished they had. Don Knotts brought the laughs. Francis Bavier gave the show its soul. And then there was Ronnie, the curious boy who grounded it all. The chemistry between them turned the show into a phenomenon, earning multiple Emmy nominations, including several for Outstanding Comedy Series, though it never took home the big prize, losing to The Jack Benny Show, The Bob Newhart Show, and later The Monkees. Its legacy didn't need trophies. Because, while other shows faded, The Andy Griffith Show became timeless, and at the center of it all was a red-haired kid learning lessons that would guide him for the rest of his life. Not just about acting, but about patience, leadership, and heart. That small boy from Duncan wasn't just pretending to be Opie Taylor. He was learning how to tell stories that would one day move the world. And little did anyone know, the quiet kid from Mayberry would grow up to become one of the most respected directors Hollywood had ever seen. But the journey there wouldn't be easy. Years later, the same industry that raised him would nearly break him. From Happy Days to the director's chair. Before Ron Howard became one of Hollywood's most respected directors, he was America's favorite redhead, Richie Cunningham, the clean-cut kid from Happy Days. His road from that all-smiles sitcom to the director's chair wasn't an accident. It was a steady climb built on instinct, grit, and a lifelong love for storytelling. It all started with a single episode of Love, American Style, a short segment called Love and the Television Set. That little role became a launching pad for what would soon become Happy Days. When the show officially kicked off in 1974, Howard's Richie was the buttoned-up, wholesome heart of the story, the perfect balance to Henry Winkler's leather-jacketed rebel, Fonzie. Their chemistry wasn't just on-screen magic, it was real. The two became the soul of the show, with Howard's everyman charm grounding Winkler's larger-than-life cool. But by 1980, after 6 seasons of laughter, fame, and teenage nostalgia, Howard wanted more. He had spent most of his life in front of the camera, and now he wanted to move behind it. Just before the show's 8th season, he walked away. Not out of pride, but purpose. He knew it was time to direct his own story. Still, he returned for a few guest appearances in the show's final season, giving fans a glimpse of the kid who had grown up before their eyes. Long before his official exit, Howard had already taken his first shot at directing. In 1977, he made his debut with the low-budget action comedy Grand Theft Auto, a film he co-wrote with his father, Rance Howard. The opportunity came after a clever deal with producer Roger Corman. Ron would star in Eat My Dust. If Corman let him direct the next movie, Howard agreed, and the trade-off paid off. The young actor proved he had more than star power. He had vision. Through the late 1970s, Howard quietly built his directing muscles with a series of TV movies for NBC, including Skyward in 1980, which starred Hollywood legend Bette Davis. But it was 1982 that changed everything. His film Night Shift, starring Michael Keaton, Shelley Long, and his Happy Days co-star Henry Winkler, turned heads. It was fresh, fast, and fearless, the work of a director who knew how to bring heart to comedy. Then came Splash in 1984, the fantasy romantic comedy that launched Tom Hanks into stardom and solidified Howard as a major Hollywood filmmaker. Audiences loved it, critics praised it, and suddenly, the former child star was a force behind the camera. 2 years later, he did it again with Cocoon, a touching sci-fi comedy drama about aging and second chances. It was another hit, earning Donna Mache an Academy Award and proving Howard could balance imagination with emotion like few others could. But in 1988, Howard's journey took a darker turn with Willow, a high fantasy adventure produced by George Lucas. The film, starring Val Kilmer and Warwick Davis, was meant to be epic, but behind the scenes, it became one of Howard's most exhausting battles. Creative clashes and production chaos pushed him to his limits. Though the movie eventually found its cult following, Howard would later admit that Willow left its mark. It was a test of patience and endurance that taught him how brutal the industry could be. He closed out the decade strong with Parenthood, a heartfelt family comedy that starred Steve Martin, Rick Moranis, Keanu Reeves, and a young Joaquin Phoenix. It opened at #1, made over $100 million, and earned 2 Oscar nominations. By then, Ron Howard wasn't just a director, he was a storyteller audiences trusted. The 1990s kept that momentum rolling. He directed Backdraft, a gripping thriller about firefighters that impressed critics like Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel. Then came the masterpiece, A Beautiful Mind. Produced and directed by Howard, it swept the Academy Awards, winning Best Picture and earning him the Oscar for Best Director. His name was now synonymous with prestige and power. And while many directors would rest on that kind of glory, Howard didn't slow down. In 2003, he took a creative detour as the narrator and executive producer of Arrested Development, the razor-sharp comedy that won him an Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series. He followed that with a mix of hits and high-stakes blockbusters, Cinderella Man, the Oscar-nominated boxing drama, The Da Vinci Code, which exploded at the box office with over $750 million, and Frost, Nixon, the gripping political drama that earned him another Oscar nod. Even Angels and Demons proved he could balance commercial appeal with intelligence. Not everything was gold. The Dilemma stumbled, but Howard rebounded with Rush, a pulse-pounding racing drama that critics adored. He continued to experiment, directing In the Heart of the Sea, diving into survival filmmaking, and never losing that storyteller's spark. By 2021, Howard was back in survival mode, literally. He began filming 13 Lives, the true story of the 2018 Thai cave rescue. The film, released in 2022, earned praise for its realism and emotional power. And just as Hollywood evolved, so did he. Netflix tapped him for The Shrinking of Treehorn, his first animated feature, and the survival thriller Eden, starring Jude Law and Ana de Armas. From a red-headed kid in Happy Days to one of the most enduring filmmakers of his generation, Ron Howard's journey has been anything but predictable. He has lived 1,000 stories and told even more. But behind every success, there has always been the same driving force, that curious, determined boy from Mayberry who never stopped chasing the next great story. Ron Howard's one true love, the woman who stood by him through it all. Ron Howard has built a career most could only dream of. From child star to Oscar-winning director, he's done it all. But behind every great chapter in his life, there's been one constant. Cheryl Howard, the woman who's been with him since the very beginning. Ron's story started early. At just 5 years old, he was cast in The Andy Griffith Show, winning hearts across America as Opie Taylor. Then came Happy Days in the 1970s, where he became the face of wholesome TV before making his bold move behind the camera. From Apollo 13 and A Beautiful Mind to Hillbilly Elegy, Ron went from the boy next door to one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers. And through every step of that journey, Cheryl was right there beside him, his anchor, his muse, his quiet strength. Their love story began long before Hollywood fame. They met in high school at John Burroughs High in Burbank, California. Two teenagers who had no idea how far life would take them. In November 2020, Ron celebrated the 50th anniversary of their very first date. He shared that it was November 1st, 1970, when he took Cheryl to see a re-release of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Before grabbing pizza at a now-closed spot called Barnone's, he wrote that they planned to mark the day by driving the same 1970 Volkswagen Bug he had picked her up in 50 years earlier, still running strong just like them. What most people don't know is that Cheryl didn't say yes to Ron right away. Their daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, once revealed on The Drew Barrymore Show that her dad proposed 3 times before Cheryl finally agreed. According to Bryce, Cheryl wanted to finish school and take her time before jumping into marriage, saying she wasn't quite ready to be on his train yet. That independence only made their connection stronger. In 1975, after 5 years together, Ron and Cheryl made it official. They married in Burbank on June 7th, surrounded by family, friends, and even Ron's on-screen dads, Andy Griffith and Tom Bosley. Nearly 50 years later, Ron reflected that there was never anyone else for him. He described Cheryl as incredibly supportive and said their compatibility had endured every kind of experience life threw at them. When asked about the secret to their long marriage, Ron admitted there was no formula. He explained that communication had always been their foundation, learning to have hard conversations in constructive ways and understanding that sometimes love grows with a little bit of luck. Cheryl has quietly been part of Ron's career since the very beginning. She has appeared in every movie he's ever directed, even back when he was in high school. From small cameos to blink-and-you-miss-it moments, Cheryl became his personal good luck charm. Ron has even mentioned that he's superstitious about including her in each of his films, making sure she's at least visible in one frame. And when Arrested Development came along, the show Ron produced and narrated, Cheryl even played herself. Together, they raised 4 children: Bryce, twins Paige and Jocelyn, and their youngest, Reed. Like their parents, the Howards are a creative bunch. Bryce became a star in her own right, with roles in The Help and Jurassic World, and has also built a strong directing career, helming episodes of The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett. Paige followed a similar path, making her debut in Adventureland and appearing in projects such as The Employer and Collection. Reed took a different route, becoming a professional golfer and even developing a training aid for players struggling with swing balance. Jocelyn keeps a low profile, but has joined her family at public events. And all 4 siblings once appeared as themselves in Arrested Development, keeping the Howard legacy alive on screen. Now, Ron and Cheryl aren't just proud parents, they're proud grandparents too. Bryce and her husband, actor Seth Gable, share 2 children. Theodore Norman and Beatrice Jean Reed and his wife Ashley welcomed a daughter, Aspen Lee. In April 2020, Bryce announced the arrival of her niece, Elodie Vivian, Ron and Cheryl's 6th grandchild. She celebrated the moment with humor, sharing online that she was already thinking of dressing little Elodie as Baby Yoda. Paige tied the knot with actor and artist Tim Abu Nazar in 2022, while Jocelyn, ever private, is believed to be the mother of Ron and Cheryl's other grandchildren, Quinn, Sawyer, and Elodie. After more than 5 decades together, Ron and Cheryl's love hasn't faded. It's only grown stronger. From high school sweethearts cruising in a VW Bug to lifelong partners raising a family of artists and dreamers, they've built something rare in Hollywood: a real, lasting marriage. Ron Howard's breaking point, the joke that nearly ruined his career, and the fight that almost ended Happy Days. Ron Howard has always been the calm in Hollywood's storm, the good guy, the one director who's managed to stay far from scandal. But even he hasn't been completely untouched by controversy. In fact, one offhand joke in a forgettable movie caused the biggest uproar of his entire career. Unlike filmmakers who thrive on shock value and headlines, Howard's name has always stood for clean, classic storytelling. He's never been one to stir the pot. Sure, the Da Vinci Code and its sequel ruffled a few feathers at the Vatican. But beyond that, his record was spotless until 2011. That year, he released The Dilemma, a film that quickly became both a creative and public relations nightmare. Howard would later call The Dilemma a shocker and tone-deaf, admitting it was one project he wished he had never made. The film tanked at the box office, and critics tore it apart. But what really lit the fire was a single line in the trailer, a throwaway joke that instantly blew up into national controversy. In the promo, Vince Vaughn's character quipped that electric cars are GE, not homosexual GE, but my parents are chaperoning the dance GE. That one sentence sparked outrage. Universal Studios, trying to get ahead of the storm, reached out to GLAAD before the trailer even dropped, a move that made it clear they knew the line would cause trouble. CNN's Anderson Cooper blasted the trailer on national television, urging viewers to push back against language that hurts young people. Online, the backlash grew fast and loud. Universal tried to contain the damage by recutting the trailer without the line. But the original joke stayed in the final movie, and Howard wasn't backing down. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times, Howard explained that the studio's decision to remove the line from advertising was appropriate, but he refused to erase it from the film itself. He expressed that while he believed in sensitivity, he didn't believe in censorship. He noted that The Dilemma was unfairly taking extra heat as a stand-in for years of Hollywood comedies that had used far worse jokes. Howard clarified that the scene was meant to show something about the main character's personality, not the filmmaker's beliefs, and that no one ever expected the line to define the entire movie. Still, for a director so famously controversy-free, the backlash was a shock to his system. Fortunately for him, the outrage faded as fast as the movie itself did. When The Dilemma bombed and disappeared from theaters, so did the noise. But that wasn't the only time Howard found himself standing his ground. Years earlier, during his run on Happy Days, he came dangerously close to walking away from one of television's most beloved shows. When Happy Days first premiered in 1974, it centered on Howard's character, Richie Cunningham, the clean-cut boy next door navigating teenage life. But by the third season, the show's ratings were slipping, and all eyes turned to the breakout star, Henry Winkler's Fonzie. The leather jacket, the charm, the catchphrases. Fonzie was television gold. The producers wanted to capitalize on that success. Their plan was to change the show's title to Fonzie's Happy Days. Howard didn't fight Fonzie's rise. He understood why the writers wanted to shift focus. Winkler's charisma had revitalized the series, but when he heard the idea of renaming the show, he made his position crystal clear. His ego wouldn't allow it. Howard explained that if the title had changed, he would have quit, no matter what his contract said. It wasn't about jealousy, it was about principle. The show worked because of its ensemble, and turning it into a one-man spotlight felt wrong. Thankfully, Happy Days creator Gary Marshall saw it the same way. So did Winkler. who reportedly thought changing the name would disrespect the rest of the cast. Both men pushed back, agreeing that the heart of the show wasn't just Fonzie, it was the chemistry between them all. In the end, the name stayed. And because of that decision, Happy Days went on to become one of the most iconic sitcoms in television history, lasting 11 seasons and securing its legacy as a cultural touchstone of the 1970s. Changing the title might have broken the show and its cast. Keeping it intact allowed Happy Days to thrive as a true ensemble piece, the kind of wholesome, feel-good entertainment that defined an era. For Ron Howard, both moments, one in comedy and one in controversy, showed the same thing. Whether facing public backlash or a behind-the-scenes standoff, he has always chosen integrity over easy wins. And maybe that is why, decades later, he is still one of Hollywood's most respected names, unshaken, uncorrupted, and unapologetically true to himself. But Hollywood is not always kind to those who stand by their principles. Behind the fame, the charm, and the success, Ron Howard's rise came with its share of creative storms, moments that tested his patience, his confidence, and his love for filmmaking itself. Ron Howard regrets making this 1988 movie because of her. Ron Howard has spent a lifetime making audiences smile. But what many don't know is that behind the laughter, Howard's journey to becoming one of Hollywood's top directors wasn't always joyful. Some sets tested his patience, his skill, and even his sanity. And one film from the 1980s, the one he still looks back on with a wince, changed him forever. To understand where that regret came from, you have to rewind to the years when Ron Howard was still finding his footing behind the camera. Directing wasn't a playground. It was a battlefield. When he made his 1984 breakout hit Splash, and then followed it with Cocoon in 1985, audiences saw two lighthearted, successful movies. But behind the scenes, Howard was fighting a very different story. One filled with pressure, friction, and the kind of growing pains that nearly broke him. Howard once admitted that his early years as a director weren't easy. When he approached Michael Keaton to star in his 1986 comedy Gung Ho, he tried appealing to the actor's sense of fun. He recalled telling Keaton that his last couple of films, Splash and Cocoon, had been great experiences, but not necessarily enjoyable because they were so difficult to make. What he wanted now was a project that would actually be fun again, and he hoped Gung Ho would be that. But the truth was that Splash and Cocoon, despite their success, had pushed him to the edge. Years later, Howard looked back on those movies as milestones, but also as some of the hardest challenges of his life. Reflecting on his early career, he explained that Splash was born out of a collaboration with his friend and producer, Brian Grazer. The two of them, both baby boomers in their late 20s and early 30s, shared the same creative spark and ambition. Hollywood at that time was changing fast, and they saw an opening, a chance to become the new voices of their generation. Howard admitted that those first two successes were meaningful, but they also came with immense pressure. Then came Cocoon, and that was where things got complicated. The film was produced by the powerhouse team behind Jaws and The Sting, and suddenly Howard found himself surrounded by seasoned industry veterans. Cocoon went on to win awards and become a box office hit. But behind the scenes, it was anything but smooth. Howard later revealed that he felt out of his depth, pretending he had all the answers while quietly learning how to lead some of Hollywood's most experienced actors. Even Tom Hanks, who landed his first major role in Splash, once pointed out how tough the situation was. Big-name actors at the time weren't exactly thrilled about working with a young, untested director still known to many as Mayberry's Opie Taylor. Hanks admitted that the only reason he got the call was because the bigger stars had turned the role down. On Cocoon, the challenges grew more personal. Howard was managing a cast of older, highly respected performers, many of whom had decades of experience and weren't easily directed. He likened the process to coaching a youth basketball team, explaining that as a coach, you had to recognize every player's strength. If one couldn't dribble, maybe they could still be a great defender. He used that same philosophy on set, pushing each actor to shine in their own way, even if it wasn't easy. But not everyone made it easy. Howard described his time working with Wilford Brimley as particularly rough. Brimley was known for his strong will, and their dynamic sometimes grew tense. Howard admitted that dealing with him was difficult, but he also understood that Brimley's raw honesty and improvisational instincts brought something special to the film. It gave Cocoon the emotional depth and realism it needed. Howard recognized the challenge and turned it into strength. He made it his mission to keep the set from becoming toxic, to balance Brimley's intensity with the comfort needed for everyone else to thrive. In the end, those exhausting shoots, Splash, Cocoon, and later Willow in 1988, were the crucible that shaped Ron Howard into the director he is today. They weren't the fun, easy productions fans might imagine. They were grueling, stressful, and at times disheartening. But they taught him how to lead, how to navigate egos, and how to tell stories that resonated far beyond the screen. Howard would later admit that Willow, the 1988 fantasy adventure he directed for George Lucas, was one of his most demanding and regretful experiences. The creative tension behind the scenes, the pressure of living up to expectations, and the clashes that unfolded made it the one film from that era he wished had gone differently. Looking back now, Ron Howard's career is filled with triumphs such as Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, and Frost Nixon, films that defined him as one of Hollywood's most consistent directors. But those early battles, the ones that left him exhausted and second-guessing himself, were just as important. They were the fire that forged him. And as for that 1988 film, the one that nearly broke him, it remains a reminder that even Hollywood's nicest guy had to fight his way through his own storm before he became the legend we know today. Do you think Ron Howard is one of Hollywood's greatest directors? And which of his films is your personal favorite? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.